What is going on, all you constant listeners out there in the multiverse? It is your host, Brian of Earht-16, the host of the podcast Geek Talk with Brian of Earht-16. And I'm hope you're all having a really good day. So in this episode, I'm going to be speaking with Randy Stone, the creator of the Bullet Adventures. And I actually had him on previously where we talked about the one-shot comic Bullet, which is about a speedster by the name of Dale D'Souza, who somehow gets powers of super speed by consuming a placebo and becomes a superhero by the name of Bullet, which is a play on faster than a speeding bullet. It's a really cool comic story, and that's modeled off of the Silver Age of heroes like Barry Allen the Flash, Green Lantern Hal Jordan, Spider-Man Peter Parker, all those stories straight from the Silver Age that were just fun to read and really enjoyable to consume. And I speak to Randy Stone about that. We even talk about a whole lot about the Silver Age and all that cool stuff in that episode and more. It was a really fun talk. I hope to have him on again sometime soon. And actually, I want to show you Constellation something. So in this podcast, I'm looking to speaking not only to comic creators, but also other creators as well, like cosplayers or just gamers. And speaking of cosplay, check this out. This right here is a Boba Fett helmet, or it's going to become one. I actually made it myself, and I made it from a YouTuber. It was modeled off of designs from a YouTuber who created the Boba Fett helmets and Mandalorian helmets out of EVA foam, which this is EVA foam, and I had no idea at the time that you can make anything out of foam and make it look realistic. And actually, this is a big shout out to the YouTuber Punish Props Academy. Really awesome dude, and just by looking at this video, I made this really awesome helmet. I didn't even think I could make this. Okay, like the one thing I did make, and mind you, this is like my first year cosplaying. Okay, and the one thing I actually did manage to make was a Mr. Knight mask for Moon Knight, which actually lights up, and that was with the help of another video. But this right here, I never thought I'd make a Boba Fett helmet. I mean, I wanted to make one, but I didn't quite know if I was able to, if I was going to get the materials though, but lo and behold, the stuff that's called EVA foam, you can actually make EVA foam you can make EVA foam into anything. I mean, it's like our own Beskar, if you will. The metal material that's used to make Mandalorian helmets or Mandalorian armor. So this right here is really cool. I mean, I'm almost finished with it. I had to like put some caulk on it. So, I mean, it's coming along really well. And then I'm just going to put some, I want to say maybe like plastic dip or something just to paint over it and make it look really awesome, make it look sleek. I mean, it's a Boba Fett helmet, so it's not going to be super sleek, but it's going to be the re-armored version that he wore in The Mandalorian after retrieving his armor from Din Djarin, who got it off of Cobb Vanth in Chapter 1 of the Season 2 of The Mandalorian. And speaking of The Mandalorian, I mean, I'm really excited for Season 3. As you all know, I'm a Star Wars fan, so there's that. So check it out too. Even more this. Man, that is so awesome, dude. I mean, I feel like my 10-year-old self again who watched Empire Strikes Back. Bring me Captain Solo and the Wookiee. He's no good to me dead. Not my best Boba Fett impersonation, but well, so there you have it. So in this episode, again, I'm going to be speaking with Randy Stone. Really fun conversation. I hope you all enjoy it. And as I always say, constant listeners, stay ever so awesome. This is Brian of Earht-16 telling you to enjoy this episode. What is going on, all you constant listeners out there in the multiverse and constant viewers? You're listening to Geek Talk with Brian of Earht-16. I'm your host, Brian of Earht-16, and today I have my guest, Randy Stone from Altruist Comics, and today we are going to be talking about his comic, Bullet Adventures, the continuation of the Bullet story.
Hey Brian, how's it going?
Going really well. How's it going with you, Randy?
Excellent.
How are things in the Great White North?
They're pretty good. The weather's nice today. Pretty warm still.
Yeah, the weather is getting really nice here in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, a couple of weeks ago it was hot. My HVAC was down, and it was bad. And like, I mean, I'm pretty sure it doesn't get too hot in Canada. I mean,
Yeah, we have some hot days. I
Oh
don't know what
yeah?
the conversion would be like, but yeah, we had a pretty warm summer for a while there.
Try 120-degree weather.
Yeah.
But anyway, glad you're doing really well. We're going to be talking about the Bullet Adventures, which is the continuation of the Bullet story. And can you tell us a little more about Bullet for those who are new to the channel or to the podcast?
Yeah, so last year we put out a self-contained one-shot, Bullet. That told the story of an elderly guy, Dale, who was looking back on his time in the 60s as he gained powers, became a hero, fell in love, all that good stuff. So it was a nice self-contained story that wrapped up with that one-shot, but we wanted to revisit the character and kind of play off some of these themes and characters that we've introduced. And that's why we're starting off the ongoing series, Bullet Adventures. Number one is on Kickstarter right now, so that's a few more weeks left in that campaign, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I felt like Bullet was such a fun story. When I first read it, I read like the one shot that was from last year, and it was just an amazing story about this young man. We have no idea how he got these powers. I mean, supposedly it's from a placebo effect, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be explored in the future, though. But just that story alone was just really cool. How he got his powers, and all he wanted to do was just help people. He didn't,
Yeah.
at that point, he didn't really care how he got the powers. And along the way, he falls in love, he makes friends, but then not tragedy though, but I think he hits a roadblock when his age starts to accelerate.
Yeah.
And and it's just amazing like how he dealt with it. I've noticed just kind of revisiting it again and how graceful he was, because I don't know how I would feel if I got superpowers one day, and obviously I'd be excited about getting superpowers, but then to deal with the after effects, like aging especially,
Right.
like
So
go
in
ahead.
that case, basically, he does the right thing as far as he can, but when it realizes that it's killing him to use his powers, he stops to be with his new bride and start a family and whatnot. But when the consequence is huge, where the life, the world's at stake, that's where he actually has to make the choice: do I continue? And so it's a great hero's tale.
Quite a sacrifice, and it's a really noble sacrifice, I would say.
Yeah.
Almost reminds me of the Elseworlds comic of Superman versus the War of the Worlds.
Okay.
And it's kind of the same continuity as Superman. Well, not the same continuity, excuse me. Everything happens the same way. He's born on, he's like born from Krypton, crash lands on a planet, on the planet Earth, and becomes Clark Kent. But this is during I think the 1930s, and the World of Worlds, the events of the World of Worlds happen, and he sacrifices himself to save the planet from aliens.
Yeah.
Then in a twist, Lois Lane ends up, he's in love with Lois Lane, obviously, but then he sacrifices his life to save her and the rest of the planet.
Right.
And Lois Lane ends up marrying Lex Luthor, who was somehow kind of behind the whole thing. I don't know. It's a really weird story, but it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, I
And
mean that's the hero. They do the right thing because they can. And that's kind of the role model that I looked up to at all these superheroes that I read growing up. You kind of want that hero to make the right choice.
yeah, and I think that was that's like the whole sort of spirit of the silver age of comics, I feel, where they know they have to do the right thing, even if it's going to hurt them. In the
Right.
long run, it's going to, save the world, and that's all that matters to them. And I think we see that with a lot of heroes, like heroes that came out of the Silver Age, that is like Barry Allen, the Flash,
Yeah.
Peter Parker, Spider Man.
Of course. Yeah.
And even if you watched No Way Home, Peter Parker had to make that sacrifice to save the planet, or to save pretty much all of reality,
Yeah.
at the price of people forgetting who he was and having
Yeah.
to start over again. I mean, spoiler alert for those who haven't watched No Way
I
Home.
just
Spider-Man No
finally
Way
watched it
Home.
like a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? It was
Yeah.
pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
the explored more of the multiverse, the Spider-Man from the other universe. We get to see Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, Tobey Spider-Man, or Tobey
Yeah.
Maguire. It was really cool.
A lot of fun. But yeah, basically, it seems like a no-brainer. Obviously, if you're going to sacrifice yourself to save the entire universe or multiverse, like you kind of have to do it.
Yeah,
So, most people would, I would like to think, but it's still a tough choice.
yeah, definitely. So we talked a little more about Bullet Adventures there. So how's it going to be different from the one shot? Like, what
So
would we
it
be
comes to the
expecting?
present day. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
Hmm.
That after the events of issue one, Dale's sent back in time to the 60s again, but then in two, he'll come forward, and we eventually see him in the modern day, and how that interacts with revised versions of previous villains, returning villains, some of the old guys, dealing with Dale and his family and all these relationships and stuff in the present. So that's probably the biggest change. We
Yeah.
still have kind of like a Silver Age feel or approach to comics in that way, like self-contained stories that, you get that, one story that you have beginning, middle, and end, and then you want to come back for the next issue because you had such a great time, not because it's part 3 of 6 that you have to, keep reading just to get your full story.
Yeah, this makes you wanting more and all that.
Right.
And I remember too, like from our last chat, you mentioned that that your co-writer Jordan, he knows a whole lot about the Speedster lore of
Yeah.
and all that, and him being a huge Flash fan. Is it safe to say that he added more input to the story of Bullet Adventures or the stories of Bullet Adventures?
Yeah, definitely. Like, so for the one shot, it was essentially the same story that I wrote a dozen years ago. He kind of stripped it down and built it back up, kind of put more emphasis on Joanna and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
details are a lot of him, but the story idea itself came from my initial draft. Whereas the Bullet Adventures issues are a lot of way more collaboration between the two of us. I had a jumping on point for the first issue, and then he took it from there. We went back and forth a few times. Other ideas for future issues, we kind of just had just little one-off ideas between the two of us, and he'd say something and I'd kind of ramp it up a bit, and then he'd take it further and back and forth. So it was very collaborative, much more than the first issue or the one shot.
And that's one of the things I like about collaboration too. It just brings more a more fleshed out story, a more fleshed out creation.
Yeah,
Yeah, and not to say that, of course, doing it on your own, I mean, makes stories golden. I mean, they do though. But I think when you have like another set of eyes or another set of hands on
exactly.
it, it's a chemistry. Like it
Yeah.
creates something even more better. And
Oh yeah,
that's
for
one of the
sure.
things like about your collaboration with Jordan. I mean, you have the story, which is an amazing story. Then he puts more of like the input,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it reminds me too of like I remember watching. Have you seen the documentary Bill and Me? Without I
No,
think it
Bill
was
Finger?
about Bill Finger.
I haven't seen it. No.
No, it's a really good documentary, and it
Yeah.
talks about like how it to me it just talks about it explains the importance of collaboration because Bob
Yeah.
Kane, he didn't acknowledge the fact that Bill Finger helped him create Batman.
For
I mean,
sure.
yeah, he's the
Yeah.
sole creator of Batman though, but guess who added all the flamboyant villains, all
Yeah.
the costume of the Batman that we know and love? It was Bill
Yeah.
Finger.
Exactly.
And going back to the Bullet Adventures, I mean, the fact that it's a collaborating thing is a cool thing,
Yeah.
and to acknowledge that,
Oh yeah. So in the credits page, I mean, I've got Jordan as co-creator. It's created
absolutely.
by the artist that we worked with, Kath Lobo, from the original, and on and on and on. Obviously, if I was trying to do it all myself, it wouldn't be nearly as good. Jordan's an actual writer. Like, he's really good. I can come up with some cool ideas here and there, but like, he's a great writer. So,
Absolutely.
I'm honored to have him building these stories with me.
And again, I mean, this, when you go at it alone, I mean, it'll still be gold, but, sometimes it helps to have that, splash, of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it more golden.
Yeah.
And let's see. So, would you say that, what would you say would be the inspiration behind Bullet Adventures, or just the man, the myth, the speedster himself, Bullet?
So in continuity, like what the character is inspired by, or me being inspired to
Yeah,
create them?
I mean, characters, or, even Bullet himself.
Yeah, I mean, just because he's a good guy, Dale's just, he did the right thing. Joanna says it in the one shot. Like, a lot of people could have done something else when they had these powers, and here you are saving this bank that's getting robbed or whatever. So yeah, he's doing the right thing. He's just the kind of hero that I read about when I was a kid, and I'm producing these stories because I've got two young boys, and I want these kind of things that they can grow up with as well. Imagining that they're a hero running around pretending to be Bullet, that would be a dream come true for me. That other kids are like that too. I mean, obviously my kids are built-in fans, but if other kids are out there like pretending to be Bullet, that would be just amazing.
It'd be really cool if I could cosplay as Bullet because I'm a cosplayer. I mean, just to have wear that uniform. The uniform looks really awesome. The yellow boots, the goggles, and all that, and like that's a really sick outfit. And and just to name itself Bullet, like it's a play on faster than a speeding bullet. I would say
that's exactly where it came from. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, and he looks like a bullet too, so it's a really cool, concept, and like, hey, for you cosplayers out there, I mean, there's another character that you can cosplay as, and if they ask you at a convention, it's like, yeah, it's from this independent comic that is about a speedster who just goes out and does the right thing, and looks cool doing it. I mean, literally.
I would love to see it. If anybody ever does cosplay as him or any other character for my books, send me photos. I'll print them in the back. I want to have like an ongoing letters page in the back of the book. So, fans can write in letters, but if they've got fan art or cosplay photos, I will definitely run those things. It would be so cool to see that.
There's a way to spread the love and to spread the comic. And, because like there's more, I bet there's probably more stories to tell about this guy. I mean, about Bullet and then some, and probably some other characters. Yeah. And speaking of those characters, we actually meet a whole lot of them, and one in particular I wanted to mention was Michael, who happens to be the lab assistant to the Professor Rosen.
Yeah, original.
Yeah, and in Bullet Adventures, we notice that he comes from the future. There's a future version of him coming up to Dale and asking for his help to become like one of the great minds or the greatest scientists of all. But then we don't quite know Michael's angle. I mean, it's kind of like either he's an ally or he could be just a jealous person kind of becoming a villain in a sense. I think we mentioned that in the last podcast too.
Yeah, and you put it nicely saying ask for Dale's help. He doesn't so much ask as he just sends him back in time.
It's more like he demands it. Yeah, he kind of twists his arm.
Dale had no choice in the matter. But yeah, so he comes from the future where he has developed time travel, and he wants to be recognized as the greatest scientist of all time. And Dale comments like, Michael, you've created time travel. I'm pretty sure you are the greatest scientist.
Like, what more?
What good is this to me? Because I'm an old man. I've lived my life, and I can't, benefit from this fame. So he wants to send Dale back to when Michael was just starting out, back in the 60s, giving him a chance to not only use this time travel technology in the past, but also maybe even experiment on Dale, which it kind of got the sense that that's what he was interested in the first one, in the one shot. All he wanted to do was do these studies and stuff, and Dale was off fighting crime. He's a bit jealous, like, why are you using that for this purpose when we could be, studying you and benefiting from the science behind it. And so we see that side of him in that one shot. It wasn't so obvious, but it was always lingering in the background where he had that little take. So in the future, he does have that intention that it's about me. I want to benefit from the science behind it.
Yeah. And like, I feel like he's kind of like a little bit like Eobard Thawne in a sense, who's the Reverse Flash, and like how the thing about Eobard Thawne is it's so interesting is just that he's a pretty unique villain, and he's a villain that started, who's from the 23rd century. He looked up to the Flash. He was like a hero, and I think he's like a prime example of don't meet your heroes in a sense. Right. And like his story is pretty tragic because eventually he does gain powers of a speedster, and he even meets the Flash, but then something happens to the point where he starts hating the Flash and wanting to like just make his life a living hell. And I feel like I see some of those echoes within Michael in a sense where he admires Bullet or Dale and his abilities, but he wants the fact that he and Dale have contrasting views on those set abilities,
what to do with them,
or what to do with them, is going to create a rift
Yeah.
between the two. And it actually looks like it has already, because Dale's like, nah, dude, like, I want to, like, live in peace, live with my beautiful wife. But he's like, no, I want to become the greatest scientist. And he's like, screw that, man. Like, and it's like you mentioned earlier, you already are a good scientist. And I see the same thing with Barry Allen, where it's just like, look, I just want to save lives and all that. But with Thawne, he's like, well, I just want to be just like you and everything. And it's like, okay, be like me, though. But, I mean, yeah, like with Eobard, you do see that rift. And he's like, okay, I'll say it like this. Like, okay, you can be like me by doing the right thing. And not be a villain, not be so self-serving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just thought of that when reading the whole story.
Yeah. And by the end of the first issue of Bullet Adventures, you think that maybe the way that Dale has approached Michael in the past could set him on a different path, change his perspective coming from the older Dale.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes in the future issues of Bullet Adventures.
And definitely. And, also, too, like, you mentioned all of that, plus the time travel. I would want to believe, like, as a Doctor Who fan, like, I know that sometimes, like, when you change certain things in the time stream, right?
Yeah.
Like, it changes something about the future, or aspect of the future's change. Will we also be seeing that in the Bullet Adventures?
Yeah, to some extent, yes.
Yeah.
I can't get too into it, I suppose.
The space-time.
But you'll see how things play out.
Oh, okay, cool. And I mean, it's just interesting the fact that we're right now with comics like Bullet. We're exploring, like, not only time travel, but, as I mentioned before, the multiverse, which I think is a really cool concept.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be really cool to, like, see perhaps other versions of Bullet, or other alternate versions. Like, we've seen a lot of that with today's comics. We've seen it with notably Miles Morales, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And I think we've also seen a lot of it even in the Image Comics universe, where we've seen ultimate versions of Invincible. We've actually also seen the comic crossover written by Donny Cates, which I think is a really cool comic. I mean, I don't know if you read it.
I haven't. I'd like to. It looks really good.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just really cool that right now I feel like it's kind of the return of the Silver Age, in a sense, where time travel, science fiction stuff is just, it's still cool. I mean, it ages really well.
Right. I think for so many years, comics seem to be, well, superhero comics in particular, seem to be trying to make it all real. Like, what would superheroes be like in the real world? Let's ground them. Let's dress them in realistic clothing and things like that.
Like,
whereas
Iron
Bullet
Fist
is really just a return to that. Silver Age superheroes were just fun, and they were superheroes. That was fine. Let's accept them for what it is, and just, like, colorful costumes and fun adventure and stuff like that. So that's really what we're aiming for.
And who doesn't want to wear a costume? I mean, like, shoot, I wear them all the time as a cosplayer. Yeah. And if you looked at my Instagram, you'd see me dressed up as Mr. Knight from Moon Knight, and it's, or even like Zenitsu Agusama from Demon Slayer. And I mean, it's like, costumes are cool, man. I mean, okay, yeah, you could have like you could try to ground superheroes, which is good, right, and have them wear regular clothes. I mean, I think a great example of that, like I mentioned, was Iron Fist. You didn't really see him in his actual uniform, but you knew he was Iron Fist. But then again, it's like, come on, costumes are awesome.
Yeah. And just embrace that. There's no shame in it. I think that's maybe why people got away from that. As the readership grew up, a bunch of 40 and 50-year-old men, like, we're ashamed of that kid stuff. So let's try to make it, like, real and grown up and all that. But really, let's just have fun with it, because that's what superheroes are.
And I think it's kind of reflective of, like, how some comic creators even back then viewed their own profession. They were kind of like a little ashamed of it sometimes. Like, yeah, I work in comics.
Right.
And they kind of just slumped down and all that. But, it's like, looking back right now, it's like there's really nothing wrong with, like, creating comics or reading them. I mean, I'm 35 and I still read them. I mean, if you look at my background, I still
Yeah.
have collectibles, and I'm cool.
Yeah.
Well, you probably have some other people that say like, "Oh, you're just like a teenager." It's just like, come on, like
Yeah. Embrace it.
I embrace it, you
Yeah.
know, and we embrace it because we're nerds. We get
Yeah.
it.
Well, that's the funniest thing about growing up with comics, and that was somewhat looked down on by the schoolmates or whatever else. And now, who hasn't seen the Avengers? Who wasn't watching The Walking Dead and everything else that was
Right?
based on a comic book? Like, yeah, I was there from the start, and
We
now
were
it's
doing it before it
cool.
was cool.
Yeah,
And like so reading into Bullet adventures and all that, there seems to be a new Bullet and she has like an adversary by the name of Diamond Dust. What can you tell us about that rivalry or that dynamic?
so there's a lot of legacy stuff that will be explored in the upcoming issues. Without giving too much away, we'll see the return of some villains and then other versions, kind of like a legacy character that takes on the mantle of a previous character. So, yeah, there's a lot of that, kind of exploring that relationship between family and legacies. But
Yeah.
I won't go too deep into it.
Oh no. Yeah, I mean this is going to kind of be a spoiler-free podcast. I mean, I hope. Well, we're not going to give away as much as we're not going to get we're going to try as much as we can not to give too much away because this is a really amazing story. I've already read the first two issues of Bold Adventures and it's an awesome comic. It's a definitely it's a superhero story. It's also a family story, and
Yeah,
it's an adventure story all at the same time. And I feel like reading that it kind of has some Back to the Future vibes a little bit too,
right.
you know. And yeah, and that's all I can say. And it sounds like it's gonna be a pretty fun story. And speaking of the comic itself, I'm on the Kickstarter page and looks like you're halfway there with 21 days to go. So I
Yeah,
mean, it's doing pretty well. And I'm gonna put yeah, I'll put the link on my on the description page so that way you can of this
perfect.
video and of also of the Spotify Apple iTunes links. That way you guys can take a look at the Kickstarter and just pledge because it's a really amazing comic. And
It's
also
been a lot of
there's
fun so far. We've got three more issues that are practically done. So as soon as this campaign wraps up, we'll get them fulfilled, and then the next one will be out there.
oh
So we want to
yeah.
make this a big success so we can continue on past issue four.
And in addition to that, too, there's another comic that's in the background called the Black Door Pilots, which I think it looks
Yeah.
really cool too because I'm a huge fan of like wartime stories, like World War I, World War II, and yeah. So it's I would say start pledging and
Yeah, Dino Caruso, Alex Diotto, Paul Little, who actually colored my initial pitch for Bullet those many, many years ago. He's coloring that backup story,
oh really?
The Backdoor
Wow.
Pilots. Adam Willette's lettering. So that'll be continuing in at least the first four issues of Bullet Adventures. We've got this short story in the back, and that continues on from book to book. It's a really fun idea. You kind of have to read it. I can't share too much of it
Oh
online because it
no.
is so short. But great artwork, great writing. So definitely a nice bonus for Bullet Adventures readers to get that extra little story content.
And I feel like it kind of reminds me of Watchmen too, like how with Watchmen comics they would usually have like background stories like the Crimson Corsair or something like that,
Yeah,
and how it would kind of tie directly to the Watchmen universe.
right.
And I felt like when I read Tom King's Rorschach, they did sort of like a story about William Myerson, who was actually the creator of those set comics, and how the story kind of centered around him and like how he was one of the people who embraced actually becoming a version of Rorschach after the original died long ago.
Yeah,
And there were all these. Tom King's such a brilliant writer too. If you've ever read his stuff, I mean, this is brilliant. And his Rorschach story, in my opinion, was one of my favorite Watchmen-esque stories. And he just used that one detail to kind of expand on the whole Crimson Corsair story, and it's just centered around this comic book writer who lived a pretty He lived a, don't get me wrong, he lived a pretty good life though, but also it was kind of, his personal life was kind of like average at best. He tried to get with this girl, but then she like turned him down, and the boyfriend that she was with kind of bullied him too. But then when he became Rorschach, he like got back at him. It's just an amazing story, and it's told in the point of view of a detective, a no-name detective. You don't really know his name though, but then he starts studying this guy and studying what happened, and even with the him creating the comic and all that, it's all interwoven, and it's just a really, really cool story.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
actually haven't read it. There's so many books I'd love to read, but I'm so behind on things in the past several years.
I've been a little behind too, actually. Just so many things going on. It's like, but so we're kind of closing we're kind of going on the close here. What do you hope that readers will get out of Bullet Adventures?
Just sheer fun. I mean, the stories are exciting. I think they're accessible to younger people, but not aimed down at a children's audience. I feel it's equally enjoyable by middle-aged men and teenage girls and little boys and everything in between. Like, it's just fun. Great relationships, the family dynamic that's coming up, the characters they feel real without real in the sense that they're well developed characters, not necessarily grounded like we talked about earlier, but yeah, just the fantastic playing off of the family and everything. It's great. It's just a lot of fun. I love reading it. I'm probably the biggest fan. I say that because it's not me just making it all myself. I got a great collaborative team. Yeah, people are gonna love it. If you check it out, there's 7 pages on the Kickstarter. You'll get a sense of the book from that, and then give it a try, and we'll go from there because there's more issues coming up.
That's awesome, man. Well, Randy, where can we find you on social media?
I'm at Altruist Comics at most social media. There's a Facebook page, Altruist Comics. I've got my own personal Twitter, Randy Stone COTW, where it's just me tweeting about comics and silly stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
Altruist Comics and everything, altruistcomics.com. I've got a web store that I'm setting up there. So yeah, check me out.
Awesome. And constant listeners, if you're new to the podcast or if you're new to the YouTube channel, you can follow me on Twitter at Earth16 Geek Talk and Instagram Earth16 Geek Talk. And we're also listened to on the Daily Planet. You can follow the Daily Planet at Daily Planet DC on Instagram and Daily Planet DC on Twitter as well. So yep, you can definitely listen to us on almost all channels. And Randy, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We're looking forward to Bullet meeting the Kickstarter goals and to those upcoming 3 issues. And any final thoughts?
Well, thanks for having me, Brian, and I hope everybody gives the Kickstarter a look, and we'll go from there.
Sounds awesome. Well, thank you so much, all constant listeners and viewers, for listening. This is Brian. And Randy, signing out.
Take care.